today's presentation is specifically on Revit quality control. One, of course, that hopefully we're all using our Revit models to do, right? The wonderful thing about BIM is saving us all that time with RFIs and during construction, all of that wonderful time that we get back, right? Hopefully. So Jason's going to talk a little bit over here. We have his list of top 10 tips for successful BIM implementation. If you have anything related to that or any of our presentations, please feel free to share here in the center of the mural, the BIMxt group participants. The best way that you can go about doing that is by grabbing onto a box here, text box, and very least sharing your location. You can see I actually kind of align myself with BIMIT. So I'm going to find the box that kind of has the laptop in it, right click on that guy and duplicate him around. So depending on which discipline you align yourself to, you can find that box within Mural and duplicate them around. You should be able to find quite a few boxes in that left panel that you can copy. If you accidentally delete one or do something on accident, no worries. Mural's super intuitive. You'll figure it out eventually, promise. Now, with that being said, in my location, I'm just going to come over here and I'm going to double click on there and say, my name is Dana and I'm calling from Virginia. We will give out a $25 gift card every meeting to a random participant. Today, congratulations, Allison. You have won a $25 gift card, and someone from CAD Micro, probably Allison, because she's awesome, will contact you to give that to you. Now, without further ado, I'm going to move on to Jason, who will talk about his top 10 tips. But please, as I mentioned, feel free to throw things in the mural, throw things in the chat, and engage with us throughout the presentation. How's it going today, Jason? Oh, you're muted on us.
Hey, always nervous with these live presentations and forgot to unmute myself.
No worries. I know there's always a few places where you can unmute too. I always forget, like, where did I mute it? I should be more consistent about that button.
Well, thanks for the introduction. Let's go through this list. So, there could be, some people are just starting to get into BIM. Some people have been using BIM for a long time. If you're having struggles, getting it implemented in your office, here's my 10 tips of what you should be doing to make that successful. So the first thing you want to do, well, maybe not the first thing, but you want to have a dedicated person or team within your office to undertake these tasks. That could be, a BIM coordinator, a team of architects or engineers. It depends on what you have going on in your firm. Ultimately, you probably want to have a BIM manager to oversee all of this stuff. You want to adopt and create a standard that you would follow within your firm. That standard could be, the Army Corps of Engineers. It could be the National BIM or CAD standards. It could be something that you put together on your own for your whatever suits your company. Maybe you're following old AutoCAD standards that you have within your firm. So you want to, adopt that, create it, and then follow it.
Next both thing of those, Jason, are really great because you're basically saying don't work in a tunnel in your own teams, right? Let's work as a team, as a company, right? Let's share these resources and make sure that we're all doing it the same way, right? Yep. Super important.
Yeah, you don't want to have one team doing one thing, another team doing something else, and then you may have different departments and they look like they came from different companies.
Absolutely, or two teams creating the same content, right?
That could happen too.
You guys created the same door family. It's just hard to do. Spend your time doing things, better resources.
Yep. So the backbone, I feel, of everything that you're going to be doing is a shared parameter file. This contains the parameters that you would use in your families, your templates, your schedules, your tags. Everything is built off of these parameters. So you want to create a master shared parameter file. In the past, I've used the dare I show my age, the Revit 2.0 content style guide from like 2008, I think, is a pretty good basis, I feel, for the shared parameters. There's already shared parameters in there that Autodesk has created. Some manufacturers have adopted those. Other companies have adopted those. I feel it's a good place, and then you expand on that as needed for your company. Any content that you create, you want to store that in a centralized location, whether that's your server or some cloud-based content management solution, whatever suits your needs. If you have multiple offices in different locations, a cloud solution might be better than a local server-side solution. You're going to want to build a startup file or a template that contains, views, sheets, schedules, any content that you would use on a normal project as your basis for starting your projects, so that everybody is using the same stuff. You want to standardize and continually support the content that you build, your families, your schedules, your details. The schedules and details, I would have those in a container file that you could easily load into your project as a group of details or schedules in one shot. You want to go through and document any processes or standards that you have, so that when you have new people join your firm, that they can easily read through that stuff, or you can over the shoulder with them to go over your standards so that they continue to follow those standards on their projects. If you need training, whether it's for new employees or just getting started in using BIM, you want to set up some kind of training plan, right? Do you want to go to a reseller and have some fire hose, 8 hours a day for 5 days of training? You want to do some e-training on demand? There's multitude of options out there for training. So you want to, establish some kind of training plan for continued education within your firm and training for new employees. The biggest key to all of this is that you need to get buy-in from the owners, upper management, and the rest of the project teams. Because if they don't have buy-in, they're not going to adopt any of the stuff that's being developed. And they're going to continue to do whatever they have been doing in the past. And then lastly, once you get a handle on Revit and BIM and anything else that you're doing, consider looking out for Revit add-ins that can help improve your production and efficiency within your projects. Not saying that you should go out right away and get an add-in or various other tools, but once you get established and you're comfortable with using Revit the way Revit wants you to use it, right? Because I want Revit to do this, but Revit wants you to do it this way. So it's really a balance of what Revit wants versus what you want, and then later on adopting the use of various Revit add-ins to help you do your job better.
Great tips, Jason. Great tips. And I will say some of that aligns with our last presentation on BIMxt on some of our training and ongoing materials that BIM managers may suggest, especially kind of geared towards the large company, right? When you have tons of people that you're supporting. So make sure you check out, once again, our LinkedIn group for recording on that session.
Considering a large company, maybe a single person really isn't enough to manage all that stuff. Maybe you need a team. And
you can always think about hiring consultants as well. Maybe not having someone directly internal to the group, especially if you're a smaller firm, right?
Yep, that's an option as well.
Awesome. Well, I see we are getting tons of locations from people within the mural. Thank you guys so much. One more time to add anything on here, because once again, we're going to give away a $25 gift card. We're going to come in here and we are going to copy essentially the note that kind of aligns to our discipline. Now over here on the left, this is kind of just the reference of what those disciplines are. I align myself with BIMIT. You can see that has a little laptop. So over here on the left, essentially in any one of these other boxes where they're blank, I can copy the one with the laptop by clicking and duplicating it, right? And maybe I can come in here and say, I want to see Dynamo in the next presentation, right? Because of course that's my favorite thing. So make sure you let us know what you'd like to see in the next presentation, because once again, we're here for you guys. Now, if you cannot figure out the duplication of the note boxes, that's absolutely fine. I completely understand. You can also use the text over here on the left. Just throw something in there. We really ultimately want to hear from you. We can also use the chat. We prefer the mural because it captures it, but we just really want to hear from you as participants. So without further ado, we're going to move on to Heather. Heather is a wonderful human being. I know her personally. She works with Ratio, and she is just a wealth of knowledge. Today, she's going to talk to us about keynotes and specifications and how to, like Jason was saying, create a standard. Right, Heather?
Yes. Yeah. So this presentation was adapted from a CSI presentation that I did with our specification writer that we have at my firm. But it's really, I'll do it in the 20 minutes. I'm going to set my little alarm here so that I can make sure to give Parley the correct amount of time. But we're going to be talking about how your keynotes, maybe your Revit family naming, how those can start to work with the specifications, help to train staff, also do a little bit on quality control, and of course that communication with your spec writer. Go to the next one. So these are some things that you might learn today that you might take away with, but hopefully you'll just get some knowledge about how maybe you can use Keynotes and other tools in here to help communicate and teach younger staff. All right, so just a little bit about me. I'm an architect turned into a BIM manager, turned into a standards guru and enforcer, hammer maybe. We do have a BIM hammer in my office, but and so
Let's see a picture.
If someone from my office can please post the BIM hammer, that would be awesome. So that's a little bit about me. I'm definitely all about standards, definitely all about that documentation that Jason was talking about. So a lot of the stuff came from there. And then Yvette, who's not here, but she helped develop the initial presentation. She's the specification side. So she doesn't get all the Revit things and I don't get all the specification things. So I'm probably going to use the wrong word. I'm just mostly going to be saying specs throughout this, but know that it is the specifications or the project manual that we are talking about. So I'm going to just run through some caveats and kind of those expectations that we had for Keynotes and how like our Revit file is going to magically spit out some specifications. Talk a little bit, I'll probably run through this one, talk a little bit about how we developed what we did, how we implemented, and then I'm going to spend a lot more time on our kind of ongoing organization tools and some lessons learned. So before we get started, so if you, I don't know, for some of the older folks who have been around the block, this system that you see on the left-hand side used to be known as Condoc back in the day. So that's where the notes definitely go right into what's in the specification. So this number that's reading 54000, that relates to the specifications. First of all, Dana, I want to throw up that one of the polls to see how many people are using Keynotes or are familiar with the specification-based Keynote system. I guess we can just put both of them up there, get them out of the way. So we got some people that don't know.
Are you utilizing Keynotes at your office? And there's also I don't know what Keynotes are.
All right. So I have one slide on that. So we can talk about that a little bit.
So I'll share those results. So about half and half.
Okay, all right. And then what about, let's go ahead and put that specification-based Keynote system up there. See if anybody is using that, the condoc type of situation. Lots of no's, as expected. As expected. Okay. Well, maybe I'll have.
I don't know because I'm so far removed from documentation. Okay. I'm gonna say I probably know, but but I don't get the option to even answer. So share those results as well. So largely no.
Largely no. Okay. Well, hopefully I'll have some converts by the end of this. So we shall see. All right. Next slide. Standards, you have to have standards in order for this to really work, and you have to have people that want to adhere to standards. We are a company that has 5 offices, 100, well, now we are 200 employees, and we have a one firm approach. So there's not one office doing one thing, another office doing something else, or one PM doing one thing and somebody else doing something else. We decided a long time ago that really we want everything to look the same. We want, if one person is working on a project in Raleigh, if they go to the Indianapolis project, they don't have to like figure out what the Revit file is supposed to look like or how you're supposed to note your documents. So you have to be able to follow standards. And then like having a good committee. So having somebody like me that understands Revit, that understands specifications a little bit, but also having that specification writer in those committees to kind of develop the Keynote list is pretty important. So again, this is kind of that expectation versus reality of what we thought we were getting from a Keynote system. And we use eSpecs as our platform, just to let you know, for writing specifications. And so when I started to get into like figuring out how to marry the specifications using eSpecs into Revit, it was like a really difficult math problem. And there was just like nothing that I wanted to do at all. So I kind of gave that up. And so we've been kind of hovering around this idea for a long time. We had a list, it was okay, we weren't enforcing it. So people were using a myriad of different ways to note their drawings. So a couple of years ago, we really got into like developing the Keynote list and going from there. If you are trying to tie those two things together, eSpecs and Keynotes, you're probably going to come in to start using the assembly codes. They're terrible. It's very hard. And a user really isn't getting all that much out of like putting all this information in. It's a lot. It's a lot to put onto a user when they're just trying to, make a detail. And then, so here you can just see all the different types of things that you can start to get into with your families, and how many items you'd have to go into and get figured out. I don't want to do it on my side. It's too hard. And then this is like a good project for us. So we have, 5,000, 6,000 objects that don't have any Keynote tied to them at all. So that's no bueno. And then when you get into the eSpecs side, if you are trying to create that Keynote list within eSpecs itself, you might get some like really good things, like this gypsum board, cool, but it doesn't give you all the sizes that you might want to have in your project. And so that's when we realized like we really need to get a heavy, nice Keynote list. Here you can see sometimes eSpecs just like spits out these very random notes like option, cool, not very helpful. And then, our design staff didn't really understand specifications. So that part was hard as well. And so we needed a way to really get them rolling, really start to understand what the project manual does within the project file, or within the, like within a set of drawings, make sure the things tie together. And, there's always that communication breakdown. So we wanted to fix that as well. And then of course, like if you are just using text, you probably have seen this before, where you have like 4 or 5 different ways to say the same thing. So we really wanted to eliminate that. And we wanted this text to really refer back to what was in the project manual, what was in the specifications, how does it read? So we developed this new standard, and these are the slides that I'm going to kind of run through. So basics of keynotes, just if you don't know, there's an element keynote, so that's going to point to a certain object. A material keynote obviously goes to a material, and then you have a user keynote, which are the devil. You don't want to use those very much because they're not tied to anything that you can change very easily. And then so those are what keynotes are. It is based off of a TXT file. Me and Dana were just talking about this, how it's kind of old school about how to utilize that. There are some add-ins that you can use to make it work better, but we just went the old school route and used the TXT file for now, and it seems to be working pretty good. Let's see. So
I guess the major limitation with that is that only one person can edit at a time.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. One person.
Outside of the in particular formatting that you have to do.
Right. Yeah. Is TXT formatting. What fun.
Mm-hmm.
So we developed our standards, and told people what to use, what and where. So again, going back to that documentation, same thing with Revit as with how you're drawing in your projects. You want to make sure that you have all those documents available for folks as they come on, for them to refer back to, because even if you do trainings, not everybody is going to pick up on it right away. And so then we made our list. Here's that TXT file. And then we literally just sat down and went through every single section. So it was every other week for, I just was like, well, we're just going to meet every other week until we get this thing done. And so we went through every section with our spec writers, with our CA people, and talked about, our list is very extensive. So it will grab everything that you need. But again, you don't want to be editing this TXT file. We use Keynote Manager as our platform for editing the list, but we have it locked down. So only our specification writers and our BIM specialists can edit that list. And so that helps everyone. It doesn't allow people just to put in metal panel, because there's many different types of metal panel out there. And so we want to make sure that they're communicating with the specification writer. And a little bit about the meeting. So there's the list, there's our what we went through. Here's Keynote Manager, pretty simple. And then we have one list that's for the entire office, and then we start to break it down and go by project after that initial one is made. So implementing, we obviously put our standards up onto our, well, not obviously, but we put it up onto our intranet. And then we also did smaller trainings with everyone, so we could have more conversations, we could train similar groups, and we could also make those recordings available for everybody. So also important, documentation, is being able to record things so that people can watch it later, because out of sight, out of mind. So keep that in mind. All right, so let's look at some of the tools that we use just to make sure we have this kind of ongoing collaboration, ongoing implementation. So again, like I said, we've really limited who can edit those Keynote files. And so we created a form on using just Microsoft Forms, and that will feed into an email that gets sent out to our specification writers and to any other key personnel on the project. So that's where the communication starts to come into play. It kind of forces that to happen. So it's really nice. And then this form also feeds into an Excel file so we're using Power Automate to make this happen. So if you're not familiar with that, it's a really nice tool. So through Power Automate, we can have this Excel file and we can start to see if there's trends. Okay, like everybody really needs this one type of product. We'll get it into the overall list. And then we also have really heavily been using teams. So we created a team for the project. We create a channel for them. And people can ask questions about, you know, what spec section is this? And here, like, I don't know how many of you are into documentation standards, but before, like, we could barely get our staff to read specifications, but it is a very important part to delivering a project. And so having staff come in here and being able to ask questions and having the specification writer respond right there has been really great. So it's a good tool that we have, and so highly recommend some kind of platform where you have that instant communication. And then we also created some Excel files that also go up on Teams for people to talk about. And this one, you can see this is where all the different types of keynotes would get used. And so this is pretty important for younger staff. They might not know, you know, they don't have to note a toilet. That's not necessary. So this helps them come in and see, okay, like I'm going to use most of these keynotes in a section. So it's really been, as we continue, I don't know about everybody else, but we've hired like 20 people since the beginning of the year. It's crazy. So this has been helping us to keep everyone up to date. All right, and then obviously we have our Keynote Legend. It's a legend, not a schedule. It's always confusing. In Revit that we utilize. So this is going to be the one for the overall project. And we have Imagine It Clarity. So if you're not familiar with Clarity, it is a bunch of robots doing things in the background for you. So this is exporting our Keynote list so that our specification writer can just come into that folder. They don't have to open the file. They don't have to go look for it anywhere else. The Keynote list is there. The project manager can come in there also and just, you know, kind of see what's going on. So here we have like all of our different schedules that we want our specification writer to be aware of. So again, like those tools that can automate things so you don't have to think about it, it just makes everything so much better. You can just
automate Dynamo.
Yes, it's so exciting.
So many things happening.
Yeah.
Publishing, Clarity.
Publishing, yes, so many things. And then if you don't have that option, you can also just create a sheet within your project file that has all of the keynotes listed. Hand that over to your PM and say, these are what I think is in the project. And they can be like, no way, we don't have that thing because somebody did, you know, keynoted something incorrectly. So that's been pretty valuable as well. So some of the things that we learned through this, we did have initial resistance from people that wanted to edit the Keynote file right then and there, but that people have been coming around. So they just know that I'm a standards enforcer who'll get the BIM hammer if they're not careful. And it did force communication. And people are always looking for that independence, but knowing that they need to communicate in a way that everybody on the team understands what's going on, it's just so much better. So it really did open those communication lines that kind of forced people into learning. As I mentioned, we also, in our families, we also list out what section, what division number each of the family types is in. So that's another way. It's kind of like, I call it, I don't know, I coined a phrase, it's probably already out there, but passive learning. So it's just something kind of in the background, helping people to understand, you know, how the project manual ties in with the drawings. So some things that, you know, are issues is if a contractor sees that big long list of numbers.
So this is actually a question.
Yeah.
We have a question. Do you get kickback from contractors or other guys in the field when you give them drawings that aren't usable by themselves? I can
Well,
continue. There's more to the
yeah,
question. Do you hand over the Revit model so that they can do a substitution and see descriptions instead of numbers? Do you have issues with elements not being placed properly because of end users glazed over the numbers and or didn't notice the differences? Thank you, Lionel, for that.
yes, yes to all of those things. So yes, we did have resistance from certain contractors and even certain jurisdictions. And so you can pretty easily switch out from a number to the actual text. But why we like the number-based system is because it does require the contractor to realize that there is a project manual involved with the project. And there's information in there. We want to be able to use that project manual for all it's worth and not try and note up a whole bunch of things on our drawings that are not relevant. And yes,
where the contracts you worked with regularly probably love it, right? Because they start to understand the system, being able to, legibly get through things much easier.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And so, and that's only been in a certain places, but this type of keynoting has been around, not Revit keynoting, but this type of keynoting has been around for a long time. So it's, it's fine. Like they get used to it. Like in the end, like I don't work for the contractor. Like I work for the owner. And so I'm always keeping that in mind. And then it also helps to like keep staff accountable too. And so that's super helpful. But we're always trying to retrain, check in with people. And ultimately, people don't know what they don't know. So yes, we have people that don't put in the right keynotes, but that's where the checks and balances comes into play. And we're able to like export those lists and review it pretty quickly to make sure that there's not something screwball out there going on.
And the only other question that I have so far, so keep them coming, guys, love them, that how do you manage that? The issue with one keynote applying to multiple families versus types, they don't marry one-to-one every time. Thank you for that question, whoever put it.
Yep. So we have a pretty extensive like materials. First of all, like a lot of our keynotes are based on or like want to point to materials. So
the ratio material library is actually built with some of that content.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It's already built in there. And then during the time of COVID, we also did a lot of detail component making. And so in those locations where you have to, everything's not 3D modeled. So in those places where you do have to put in detail components, we're really forcing our users to move away from hatched patterns and just lines, instead being able to put things in that actually have the correct keynote information. So it's about training. So it is about like making sure that staff understand that if they, try to use this material somewhere else, it could change a whole bunch of keynotes. So, and that goes into some of the training that we did and just, keeping people accountable. And whenever a project gets started up on keynotes, we kind of we have a little refresher with the group just so that they know what to expect and what not to do. Let's see. I know I'm like out of time. So some of the next steps here, I do want to somehow get back into figuring out e-specs, how to tie it in better. I don't really have time necessarily to go in here at this point. My specification writer can't keep this list up to date, but there has to be a better way. So those are some of the next steps that we're looking at, and probably we don't whittle the list down for each project because we figure we're going to have to like increase it anyways. So that would be another thing. A better way to do that is something else that we're looking at doing. So with that, that's about it.
Thank you so much, Heather. That was really wonderful. I really appreciate that. And if you guys have any questions that come to mind as Parley is going around his presentation, please feel free to add them to the mural or into the chat. Allison, you just posted the link to the mural once again because she's fantastic.
Yeah.
So next up, we have Parley. Thank you so much for joining us today. He is joining us from iconicBIM. How are you doing today, Parley?
Doing well. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me. first time on this group, so far impressed.
Wonderful. We're very happy to have you.
All right, so we'll get into it, I guess. My name is Parley Burnett. I'm here with iconicBIM. Most people recognize us by our main product, which is called Guardian. I think that's actually one of the poll questions that's going to be asked is, there it is.
I was on it. I was on it. Sorry, Parley.
Okay. Yep. Are you using Guardian or a tool like it? Have you heard of Guardian? Very interested to hear everybody from the group. While you're answering that, just a quick little bit about what we do. We are really focused on addressing the quality control aspect of your models and the whole process around that. Now, that could be a lot of things, right? And we're certainly not done with our mission, but really what it comes down to for us is at the bottom of the slide, 3 main things. With Guardian, you've got an immediate value. So we're really focused on, with this Revit add-in, giving you something that you can deploy out there and it will go to work for you. It's all very connected, so it's cloud-based, very little overhead from an IT perspective and management perspective, and also a proactive approach. And this is very unique, we feel, in the industry. There are a lot of tools. There are a lot of Dynamo scripts that can go back and clean up something that's been messed up or maybe done incorrectly in the past. But what we're focused on is being there in the moment, maybe, correcting things. That might look like cleaning up a family as it comes into a project, monitoring maybe some different things, or even getting in front of the user with a dialogue that gives them the right quick reminder about how to do that potentially risky operation. Okay. So Guardian is absolute magic. Thank you, Tom. So we're going to get into it, but there's not a lot of time, so we'll just try to go through some of the key aspects, and especially since there are some who have heard of Guardian, we'll focus on some things that we've recently added in our latest release that everybody is pretty excited about. So with quality control, today we're going to look at 3 main things. First off, kind of an automatic efficiency gain and protections aspect to this tool. So that would include things like addressing some duplicated families. Brand new is Workset automation and parameter prompts. We'll talk about feedback loop. This is really a key thing. I've been a BIM manager in the past, and it can really, the silence can almost be deafening, right? When you're sitting in that chair, what are the users doing, right? If you're not actually opening up every model, it's very difficult to understand.
I ask myself that all the time.
Do you? Okay. It's so silent, right? And
yes, they're suffering in silence, and I don't like it.
Yeah. So we're really trying to grease the wheels of communication, and that might look like, with this tool at least, what families are users changing in their models. Some of those might be project-related changes. Some might be actual changes that we could implement in our library, right? But instead, they don't tell us about it, and they just make that change in every project, right? So major time sink there. That's the kind of thing we're hoping to achieve, is gain that understanding of what are they using, how are they using, what are they changing. And there are over 100 different customizable commands that you can kind of monitor or even get in front of with your voice in the form of a dialogue. And then lastly, standards enforcement. This is where you can build out an evolving list of rules that enforce your standard naming of things, everything from material names to shared parameters and view templates. Okay, so there's really a lot here. We won't have time to show everything, but I'll just get right to it. So, oh yeah, and lastly, all of this is sort of powered by Guardian Backstage from a data analytics standpoint. This is all included. We have a dashboard that gives you insight into all of these activities. So even if nothing's showing up to the users, you can gain a lot of insight about how to customize your approach. Okay, so one more slide before we get hands-on in Revit. We do have this new, relatively new ability to kind of address these duplicated families in your project. I'm sure this is a pretty familiar issue for a lot of you, a very time-consuming task to reconcile manually. Guardian's approach, just by checking this box right here, is to clean this stuff up at the time it comes into the project, so that's not part of the circulating families that others have access to, right? So just checking that box, those families get merged back into the ones that are already in the project. And there is a manual aspect to this too, if you need to go back and clean something up later. Okay, so we'll get brave here and actually get into Revit.
Love it.
All right, so what I'll do is just open up a project here. We've just released a version that handles some Workset automation. So there's different aspects to this, but a simple feature that you can enable is just this prompt to ask the user to choose an active Workset when they are opening up the files. Just something simple like this can go a long way towards stuff getting put on the right Workset, not on the wrong Workset, right? So we'll just choose something like architectural. And then I'll point you in the direction here of our place on the ribbon. We have a new Workset Manager, and a lot of what we're seeing here is myself as an administrator. Okay, so your users would actually see something much more reduced than this, just 2 buttons. There's not much for them to interact with. But as an administrator, you can come into the Workset Manager. This is all sort of built on top of a database. You can define your list of worksets, even multiple sets of worksets. And then the really cool thing about that is you can build out rules. You can get very focused with those rules, a lot like you can with Revit filters. And the way those work can be automatic or manual. You'll notice a button here where you can run those rules manually. This is the best part about that. That checkbox will get those things on the right workset automatically. So just to show you quickly how that works, if I click OK here and just start drawing some levels and grids, notice how my active workset is still architectural. But if I look at the workset on these grids, it's that they are all on shared levels and grids. No action needed on the part of the user. Okay, so people get pretty excited about that. I could bring in a CAD file, it would go on the CAD workset. There's also some protections in place. If I try to put this accidentally on the wrong workset, it's protecting because of the rules on the reference plane workset. It's protecting other things from getting put on that. So I'll click OK, and that will go back on the shared levels and grids.
That's worth its weight in gold right there.
Yeah. How many of you, I wonder, don't have to answer, but how many of you go back to old models and have to fix this stuff, right? If you add up that time to fix that, it adds up. And then what are you missing, right? That's probably the biggest part to this. Yep. And then maybe with the rules, you could start to see where those gaps are and then build out the rules with Guardian.
Yeah, those pop-ups are truly, I mean, you can't really do anything without something like that, right? I mean, to even know that your active workset is set to something that you may not want it to be, right? Is something that you really do overlook. So that's incredible.
Yeah, yeah. So that's just a flavor of the automation that we're after, right? Those logical things that we're in front of again. There's another one that's kind of, it takes on a different form, but we call it our parameter prompts. We're really trying to capture user input in the moment something is done, such as creating new sheets, new rooms, new walls even, or even family instances. So with this, if I just simply check off a couple parameters that are project parameters and click OK, then when we create some sheets that use those parameters, we'll get an instant prompt as a user to populate those values right now, right? So we don't have to have things disappearing anymore in those nasty question marks, right? So we'll click apply there, and it's just dropped right in where the user expects to see that. Again, you don't have to go back after and clean any of that stuff up. Okay. Let me look at how I'm doing with time.
Pretty funny. We're seeing some pretty funny names for Guardian being shared in the chat. We have the Revit babysitter, the Revit big brother. So people seem to really be loving it, but also love coining names for it within the office.
That's funny, Dana. You know, little trivia thing for you. Back a couple of years when we were in initial development, we were talking about what do we call this thing, you know. I'm so glad we didn't go with it, but one of the options was BIM Nanny. And so I think Guardian's a much more, yeah.
Jason said that one of his users said, we're getting a Revit babysitter, and he chuckled because they're not wrong. So you're right on par with that.
Yeah, that's good. All right, so let's just show you one or two others before we drop out and become a user. So in here, if I delete something, this is also new. If I delete something like a wall, there's a new kind of proactive piece that will let the user know that other things elsewhere in the model are going to become deleted if we continue. And it's simple things like tags or dimensions in another view that sometimes those CAD converts aren't really used to thinking about. Just letting them know that those will be deleted can go a long way towards preventing rework, right?
Absolutely.
And then lastly, we'll protect something. So some users of ours call this the super pin, but as an admin, when I pin something, it will say, hey, do you want to protect this from being unpinned? So again, we're even proactive on the admin side. Sometimes they're not even thinking about like what the other users might be doing. But this is nice that we can just type in a don't move, right? And we'll click OK on that. All right. So what that means now is if I drop out and become a user, oh, that's not good.
They don't want you to be a user.
Yeah.
Darren says the Guardian's logo should be the bumpers on a bowling alley that keeps you from hitting a gutter ball. Very true. I love it. Angie says that she actually received an email of what was being deleted, in which view, and by whom. Talk about Revit shaming. I mean, totally, totally call them into the corner, right? That is fantastic.
That's it. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's worth talking about, and I'm actually surprised we've got a little bit of a server licensing thing going on. So apologies about that, everybody. I won't be able to come in and become a user and show you kind of
live demos.
Yeah, show you the effect of this, but you know the message could pop up. There's also a monitor mode for a lot of these things that derive an email, so you could even have an email sent to you right away. On that piece, and I'll just maybe jump ahead to that because that was part of the presentation. Current slide. I didn't want this to be all about Guardian, right? I think there's a lot that we do to affect change and quality in our firms without Guardian, no doubt. I did want to share this though. When we implement Guardian with a lot of our firms, we start with these recommendations, okay? If we step back, Guardian is really, yes, it's a functional and technical tool, but it's really a representation of yourself, okay? All of the features in Guardian are on-off switches, so you drive the bus. It's kind of yours to control. So in that sense, it's really just you, but in more places at once than you can be otherwise. So if we look at this upfront communication about the initiative, we always say, you know, there's some chat about Big Brother and all this stuff, right? This can go a long way towards assuaging some of those concerns. If this is a conversation up front where you're like, hey, you know what, we've been doing this for how many years, and we're still having a problem with large bloated models that the menus are gigantic and all these things, right? Everyone would be like, yeah, that's true. Yeah. You know, so obviously we need something different, and this is what that is. So if you communicate upfront about that, it goes a long way. Don't let it go stale, right? We do see different approaches. Don't let Guardian kind of just set it and forget it kind of thing. We have people that do that, and it will do a lot behind the scenes for you. But we really suggest running campaigns, right? So it might be this week, you're going to remind people about hiding elements in view and when the right time to do that is, okay? If they know it's just for a week, they're going to be a lot more patient about that. And they will see it as more of a training campaign than just heavy hammer, Heather there with the BIM hammer, right? Complete the feedback loop. So on the messages that show up to the users, there's an opportunity for them to type out a response. And I was going to show you bringing a family in from a non-standard location, a non-approved location. And if you configure Guardian to do this, a message could pop up that says, hey, use XYZ instead, right? If they type out a message that says, well, I looked there and it didn't have this particular chair, make sure that that chair gets created. That way they see the benefit of that request. If you don't do that, then you're going to have people leaving that field blank, and you won't gain as much out of it. Share the wins with the users. So again, if you can share through the dashboard that we provide that, hey, since we introduced this, we've actually had a lot less modeling in place, or a lot less people exploding CAD files. That's going to really resonate, and I think connect the dots for them that, oh yeah, you know, that does make sense. These are the kinds of things that slow me down, right? In a sense, that's Big Brother when people come in and mess up my model, right? So in a sense, Guardian's more like a friendly companion. Stick to your principles. We see all kinds of personalities. We see some timid BIM managers that will back down pretty quickly once someone complains about a pop-up. Others are just very confident that, you know what, at our firm, this is the way it's going to be done. And there's a lot of value in that confidence, both upward to your leadership and downward. And that has a very permeating effect in your whole firm. And then involve leadership. Jason, you mentioned this at the beginning. I was glad you did. The more you can communicate, which sometimes as technical people, we have a challenge with that. The more you can communicate, the better your efforts will be, okay? So the thing I was gonna say about this, I've kind of talked about it in the context of Guardian, but think about it. If we take Guardian off of this, it's all still relevant, right? It's all still relevant for your current efforts. So maybe capture a screenshot of this as a reminder that even if you don't have Guardian, it's all about communication upwards and downwards with your users and leadership. Okay.
Absolutely. Andrew says that Guardian is his bib hammer. Andrew's one of our advisors as well.
Love
and
that.
Lots of props to this product. So great work, Parley. Everybody seems to love it. Us BIM managers, we are dying for solutions like this, right? Be able to protect our Revit models.
Thank you, Dana. Yeah, thanks everybody.
We finally got approval at Ratio to get it. We're so excited. We just started the process, so starting starting the monitoring, and we'll start to pop in little things here and there.
Heck
Yeah,
yeah.
we're hopefully going to start a test here soon ourselves.
Yeah, thank you guys for your support.
We do have kind of a random, not random, but more of an open-ended kind of question related to clouds. Jason says that his company isn't supporting or really investing anything into cloud-based resources, which I find very interesting, because everything's going to the cloud, right?
They have all this emphasis on cloud, but they do little to facilitate that communication. Yeah.
Well, there's been a lot of AWS issues the last couple of years.
Absolutely. The issues were related to the servers, you know, the BIM 360 degradations, those types of things are also a problem. But when it comes down to it, and being in the DC area, you know, we work a lot with federal clients and other things that, you know, really get nervous when the word cloud is even brought up, right? So his question is, how do you address client confidentiality and security issues while using these types of tools, any cloud-based tool, right? I don't know whether Heather, Jason, you guys have something within your firms that you guys are addressing, or if you even have this concern in some of your clients.
I think if for us, if we have a client that's not wanting the cloud stuff, we just use Revit server.
Yeah, I was surprised that Revit server was still out there as a tool. We just had so many problems with it. And then I was talking to somebody from HOK, and they said, "Oh yeah, we use it." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So
yeah, they're supposed to be updating the interface so that it works with Edge and Chrome instead of IE, because IE's going away here in the next couple months from here. So, but I haven't seen that change yet.
Well, thank you. Oh, sorry. Please, Parley.
Yeah, just really quick. As a solution, we've run into this from time to time, and we've really tried to keep everything we've done with the cloud to kind of have some strict lines drawn, so we don't get into capturing project information at all, which has been pretty key in us gaining adoption even at places like the Army Corps of Engineers.
That's a great point, and something really wonderful to, I guess, keep an eye out on in terms of some of these systems and what information is actually being shared across the cloud. Awesome. Well, thank you not only to our presenters, but of course all of our participants for joining today. One thing I did not mention, which maybe I should have, is most of the images on the mural you can double click on and get to the link. So if you'd like to connect with any of our presenters, advisors, join our LinkedIn group, fill out the survey in the top left, you can just double click on the image and it will take you to that site. So please feel free to connect with us if you'd like to ask us questions directly. Maybe you'd like to ask Parley some questions about Guardian. I'm sure he'd love to hear from you. Heather and Jason, thank you so much. Parley, really appreciate your time. I'm sure we'll have plenty of questions come up in the future. Hopefully have you back again.